"Damn it, freeze, hands on your head!" The shrill shout shattered the quiet atmosphere of the Food Mart supermarket's produce section on a Tuesday afternoon around 3 o'clock. A black man holding a bag of ripe red apples startled and turned around. Instantly, he faced the cold, gleaming black barrel of a Glock 19 handgun pointed directly at his chest. The man only had time to raise his hands shoulder high, the bag of apples falling to the white-tiled floor, the fruit scattering like red marbles. His face showed clear tension, but his dark brown eyes held a strange calmness, an almost unnatural self-control in this situation. "What's wrong, officer?" His voice was low and steady without a tremor. The white police officer, his face flushed with anger or some other negative emotion, advanced closer. "Shut up. What were you trying to steal in that bag? I saw everything." The silver badge on his uniform chest glinted unpleasantly under the supermarket's fluorescent lights. An unbelievable, disastrous mistake. Or was this a blatant act of racism unfolding in broad daylight in a public place? What would happen next when a seemingly ordinary citizen faced the barrel of a gun held by someone entrusted with enforcing the law? And did that officer have any idea who he had just pointed his weapon at, or had prejudice completely clouded his judgment? That black man was Marcus Thorne, 42 years old, and he was far from ordinary. He was a veteran operative of the Central Intelligence Agency CIA, with over 15 years of undercover experience specializing in intelligence gathering and counterterrorism missions in the world's most volatile hotspots, particularly the Middle East. Marcus had just returned to Fairfax, Virginia, after a grueling and perilous 6-month mission in Syria, a mission that had cost him 2 colleagues and forced him to witness things no ordinary person would ever want to see. Today was his first rare day off after that intense period. He was in a CIA safe house tucked away in a quiet residential area, preparing for a mission debriefing with his superiors the next morning. He decided to walk to the nearby Food Mart to buy some fresh groceries, a seemingly simple act, a small normalization of life after months lived in constant vigilance and imminent danger. He carried no personal weapon nor any special CIA identification other than his wallet containing cash, a few credit cards, and a standard Virginia driver's license. His salary as a GS-14 agent was around $120,000 a year, not excessively high, considering the risks he faced. But for Marcus, money had never been the primary motivation. He just wanted to buy a few simple items, a bag of Fuji apples, a carton of unsweetened fresh milk, and a loaf of whole-grain bread. He was lost in thought about the details for his report, the faces of his fallen comrades, and the strange emptiness of returning to civilian life. The police officer confronting Marcus was Officer Dale Kopetsky, 35 years old, who had worked for the Fairfax County Police Department for 5 years. Kopetsky's annual salary was only about $65,000. Within the department, Kopetsky was not an unfamiliar name, but his notoriety was linked to his arrogant, rude demeanor, and especially his deep-seated prejudices against black people and immigrant communities. His internal record noted several reprimands for unnecessary use of force in minor arrests and racially biased comments made while on duty, but he had never been disciplined severely enough to serve as a deterrent. That morning, Kopetsky had had a rough day. He was chewed out by his superior, Sergeant Miller, for being 15 minutes late to roll call. In a foul and irritable mood, he drove his department-issued Ford Explorer patrol car around his assigned area, his mind solely focused on finding some suspicious individual to deal with, to vent his anger, and perhaps to assert his authority. As his patrol car slowly rolled through the Food Mart parking lot, Kopetsky glanced inside through the large glass doors. He saw Marcus, a tall black man dressed in civilian clothes, standing in the produce section, seemingly a bit distracted while looking at apples. Instantly, a chain of prejudices was triggered in Kopetsky's mind. He didn't see Marcus doing anything wrong, no signs of theft or disturbance. But Marcus's skin color and unusual appearance, according to Kopetsky's distorted standards, were enough to turn him into a potential target. He stopped. The car turned off the engine and quickly entered the supermarket, his hand already resting on the holstered gun at his hip. Back to the tense situation inside the supermarket, Marcus tried to maintain absolute calm, a skill honed through countless life-or-death situations. "Officer," he said again, his voice still even, "I haven't stolen anything. I was just choosing apples for dinner." He slowly, very slowly bent down to pick up the fallen bag of apples. "Freeze! Leave it!" Kopetsky growled, the gun barrel still fixed on Marcus's chest. "You think I'm blind? I saw you sneaking stuff into your bag." He took another step closer, the smell of sweat and stale cigarette smoke on his breath hitting Marcus's face. "Open that bag and show me now." Marcus slowly picked up the plastic bag of apples, placed it on a nearby cardboard box full of cabbages, and carefully opened the bag. Inside, there was nothing but 5 bright red round Fuji apples. Linda Alvarez, the Food Mart manager, a Hispanic woman in her 50s with neatly bunned black hair, heard the commotion and the officer's harsh voice and hurried over from the checkout counter. "What's going on here, Officer Kopetsky?" she asked, her voice tinged with concern. Kopetsky didn't even glance at the manager. "Stay out of this, Linda. This is police business. I'm handling a shoplifting case." He turned back, looking at Marcus with scrutinizing, contemptuous eyes. "What else? What's in your pockets? Take it all out." Marcus let out an almost inaudible sigh. He knew the situation was getting worse than expected. "Just my wallet and cell phone, officer," he said, then very carefully, slowly reached into his back jeans pocket. "Slowly? Don't do anything suspicious," Kopetsky yelled, the gun barrel twitching slightly upward. A few customers, shopping in nearby aisles, began to stop, curiously looking their way. Some, mostly younger people, had surreptitiously pulled out their cell phones and started filming the entire incident. Marcus took out his dark brown leather wallet and placed it on the cabbage box next to the bag of apples. Kopetsky roughly snatched the wallet and opened it. "Marcus Thorne," he muttered, reading the name on the driver's license. "This address is in Oakhaven. What the hell are you doing in this area?" His voice was still full of suspicion and challenge. Oakhaven was an affluent residential area, and in Kopetsky's mind, a black man like Marcus couldn't possibly live there legally. "I live nearby," Marcus replied, his voice still calm. "I came here to buy a few personal items." Kopetsky let out a malicious sneer. "Buying or stealing, you people are only good at that." Blatant, racist, derogatory remarks. Marcus felt a surge of hot anger rise in his chest. But years of experience working in intelligence facing enemies far more dangerous than Kopetsky helped him control his emotions. He knew very well that any act of resistance, however small at this moment, would be misinterpreted by Kopetsky and could lead to unforeseeable consequences, especially with a gun pointed directly at him and many eyes focused on them. The manager, Linda Alvarez, tried to intervene again, her voice trembling slightly, but still trying to sound firm. "Officer Kopetsky, I can confirm Mr. Thorne is a regular customer here. I don't think he would—" Kopetsky cut her off rudely. "You shut up! Stay out of this! This is police business, not yours." He flipped through the cards in Marcus's wallet. A credit card, a debit card, a gym membership card, and the driver's license. Nothing unusual, nothing that could be used as evidence for his suspicions. This seemed to infuriate Kopetsky even more. He wouldn't give up. "What do you do for a living, Thorne?" Kopetsky asked, his tone interrogative. Marcus hesitated for a moment. He couldn't reveal the truth about his job. I'm a consultant, he replied. It was his usual cover in situations where he didn't want to disclose his identity. Kopetsky sneered again, an ugly smile on his flushed face. Consultant consulting others on how to steal. He looked Marcus up and down with a contemptuous, appraising gaze. You don't look like the type who can afford to shop in a place like this. This insult crossed the line. Marcus knew he couldn't let this situation drag on. His mission, even though he was on leave, still had strict security requirements. An arrest, even a wrongful one, would cause unnecessary trouble for the agency and for himself. He needed to end this quickly and as quietly as possible before it spiraled out of control. Marcus lifted his head, looking directly into Kopetsky's bloodshot eyes. His voice suddenly became cold and decisive, with no trace of hesitation. Officer, he said, each word clear and firm. You are making an extremely serious mistake. I demand you lower your weapon immediately and call your direct superior to come here. The sudden change in Marcus's attitude and tone made Officer Kopetsky freeze for a moment. The earlier anxiety or resignation he had mistaken was gone, replaced by a dignity, a powerful presence, and a hint of latent danger that Kopetsky, however foolish, could sense. You dare give me orders, you bastard! Kopetsky growled, trying to regain his superior air, but his voice lacked its earlier certainty. This is not an order. Officer, Marcus replied, his voice still even, but heavy with authority. This is sincere advice, and also a warning. You are exceeding your authority and behaving in a completely unprofessional manner. Your actions from the beginning are being clearly recorded by many people here. Marcus quickly glanced towards the customers, holding phones, their cameras pointed at them. The manager, Linda Alvarez, also quickly grasped the situation and stepped forward, partially shielding Marcus. That's right, Officer Kopetsky. Please, there are many witnesses here. Mr. Thorne really hasn't done anything wrong. Please, calm down. Kopetsky began to feel real pressure. He still stubbornly believed he was right, that his police instincts couldn't be wrong. But the curious crowd was growing. The phones pointed at him like invisible guns, and especially Marcus's firm, fearless attitude made him waver. He wasn't used to prey confronting him like this. Marcus continued, his voice, now almost emotionless, cold as ice. If you don't call your superior yourself, then I will. And I can assure you the consequences of that will not be pleasant for your career. Kopetsky hesitated. He stared at Marcus, then glanced at the whispering crowd. Finally, after a few tense seconds, he lowered his gun barrel slightly, though he hadn't holstered it completely. All right, I'll call. He still tried to maintain his arrogant demeanor, pulling out the radio clipped to his belt. Dispatch, connect me to Sergeant Miller. Request Sergeant Miller to Food Mart on Main Street, have a subject causing a public disturbance. Marcus shook his head slightly, cutting Kopetsky off decisively. No, not Sergeant Miller. You need to call the head of internal affairs for the Fairfax Police Department directly. Or, better yet, call your chief of police, Chief Reynolds. And when you connect, tell them this is a matter potentially involving national security. National security! Kopetsky's eyes widened, then he burst out laughing mockingly. Are you kidding me, clown? Who do you think you are? Marcus didn't laugh. His face remained absolutely serious. He slowly recited a string of letters and numbers. Have them check the file for Marcus Thorne with special identifier Alpha Zulu 714 and make it clear to them that this is a Blue Falcon scenario. Blue Falcon scenario, an internal code used in some U.S. intelligence and military agencies referring to a situation where an agent or military personnel is unintentionally endangered or has their identity compromised by a friendly force or domestic law enforcement agency. Officer Kopetsky froze. That string of letters and numbers along with the phrase Blue Falcon scenario sounded very strange, very professional, not like something a petty troublemaker or a shoplifter could invent. But more importantly, it was Marcus's extremely serious, unwavering expression when he said those words. A flicker of doubt, then a vague fear began to creep into Kopecky's mind. He had never encountered a situation like this in his 5 years as a police officer. He stammered into his radio, trying to relay the information Marcus had just provided, though deep down he was still skeptical, thinking this might be some elaborate bluff by the subject. On the other end, the dispatcher's voice was silent for a few seconds. Then it became rushed and noticeably more tense. The dispatcher instructed Kopetsky to maintain the scene, not to take any further action against Marcus Thorne, and to await further orders. Just a few short minutes later, it wasn't Sergeant Miller or the head of Internal Affairs, but Chief Howard Reynolds himself, the Fairfax County Chief of Police, who called back on Kopetsky's radio. The radio conversation was very brief, lasting less than a minute, but it was enough to make Officer Kopetsky's face change color completely. Those standing nearby could hear Chief Reynolds's angry, almost roaring voice coming from the radio's small speaker, though they couldn't make out the exact words. Kopetsky tremblingly turned off his radio, his hand holding the device drenched in sweat. He turned back to Marcus Thorne, his eyes now devoid of any arrogance or contempt, replaced instead by extreme fear, confusion, and a hint of desperation. Who are you really?" he stammered, his voice barely audible. Marcus didn't answer immediately. He just looked at Kopetsky with cold eyes, then glanced at the gun still clutched in his hand, though the barrel was now pointed at the ground. Less than 10 minutes later, 2 unmarked black sedans with temporary government plates quietly pulled up and parked right in front of Food Mart's main entrance. 3 men in well-tailored black suits wearing dark sunglasses despite the lack of harsh sunlight quickly exited the cars and headed straight into the supermarket. They didn't say a word to the onlookers, just nodded slightly, and flashed black leather badge holders for a quick glance at the manager, Linda Alvarez, before walking directly to the produce section where Marcus and Kopetsky were still standing. One of the 3 men, the oldest looking and apparently the leader, stopped in front of Officer Kopetsky. He looked Kopetsky up and down with an ice-cold, emotionless gaze. "Officer Dale Kopetsky." The man said, his voice low and even, "We'll take over this matter from here. Please surrender your weapon and police badge to us." Kopetsky, his face bloodless, stammered, But sir, I was just doing my duty." "No buts, officer." The man in the suit cut him off decisively. "You've made a very, very big mistake. A mistake you won't easily forget." Officer Kopetsky stood as if frozen to the spot. He slowly, tremblingly placed his Glock 19 on the nearby produce counter, then painstakingly unpinned the gleaming silver badge from his uniform chest. His face was as white as a sheet-cold sweat beading on his forehead. Another of the men in suits slightly younger turned to Marcus Thorne, his tone immediately changing, becoming extremely respectful and somewhat concerned. "Mr. Thorne, is everything all right, Sir? Director Thompson has been informed, and he sends his deepest apologies for this unfortunate incident." Marcus nodded slightly, his expression still serious. "I'm fine, but this situation needs to be resolved thoroughly and fairly." By now, everyone in the supermarket, from manager Linda Alvarez and the cashiers to the curious customers, understood that the black man they had just witnessed being accosted and humiliated by a white police officer was no ordinary person. Manager Linda's jaw dropped in astonishment, unable to believe what was happening. The customers secretly filming also felt a chill run down their spines and quickly put away their phones. They realized they had narrowly avoided getting entangled in an extremely troublesome and complex affair. Marcus Thorne didn't raise his voice or show anger, but every word he spoke thereafter carried a special weight, making those around listen carefully. He requested to speak privately with Chief Howard Reynolds, whom he was informed was on his way to the supermarket. While waiting, he made a clear request to the newly arrived CIA team to collect all video footage from Food Mart's security camera system, as well as any video clips recorded on cell phones by witnesses at the scene. The truth of this incident needs to be completely and objectively clarified. Marcus said, "Not just for my sake, but for the fairness of the community, and to ensure that similar acts do not recur." He also made his zero-tolerance stance clear regarding Officer Kopetsky's blatant racism and abuse of power. This is not merely a personal mistake made in anger. Marcus emphasized, this is a clear manifestation of a systemic problem, a toxic attitude that needs to be identified and completely eliminated from law enforcement. About 15 minutes later, Chief Howard Reynolds, a white man in his 60s, with short graying hair and a stern, weary face, arrived at the supermarket. He looked tired, stressed, and clearly very angry, though it wasn't clear who he was angrier with, Kopetsky or this troublesome situation. The private conversation took place in the small office behind Linda's checkout counter. Only Marcus Thorne, Chief Reynolds, and 2 of the 3 newly arrived CIA agents were present, one of whom, by introduction, was legal counsel for the Central Intelligence Agency. Marcus Thorne, with astonishing calm, recounted the entire sequence of events from beginning to end, clearly, coherently, without any personal emotion. He focused solely on accurately describing Officer Kopetsky's specific actions and words from the moment he approached him until the CIA agents appeared. The CIA lawyer then added legal perspectives. He emphasized that Officer Kopetsky had not only seriously violated Marcus Thorne's civil rights, but had also potentially endangered a federal agent on duty. And Kopetsky's actions risked compromising sensitive national security information, though fortunately, that hadn't actually happened. He also mentioned the emotional distress and damage to Marcus's reputation. Chief Reynolds sat silently listening, his hands clasped on the table. His face grew darker and darker. He knew this incident was extremely serious. It wasn't just an internal disciplinary matter for the Fairfax County Police Department, it directly involved a powerful federal agency like the CIA. The police department's reputation, already tarnished in the eyes of some in the community after a few previous scandals, was now under severe threat. After a preliminary review of the witness' cell phone videos, which one of the CIA agents had quickly collected and played on a tablet, Chief Reynolds had no grounds left to defend or condone Officer Kopetsky's behavior. The evidence was too clear and irrefutable. Officer Kopetsky will be suspended immediately pending the full results of an internal affairs investigation, Chief Reynolds said, his voice tinged with weariness. But I can tell you now, Mr. Thorne and gentlemen, that this behavior is completely unacceptable in our force. It's very likely, almost certain, that he will be terminated after the process is complete. Marcus Thorne shook his head slightly. Chief Reynolds' suspension and very likely are not enough in this case. I need a clear, decisive, and swift decision. Officer Kopetsky's behavior is not just an isolated personal lapse. It reflects an attitude, a toxic ideology that must be immediately removed from the ranks of those entrusted to protect and serve the people. I demand he be fired immediately, without delay. The CIA lawyer added, his tone professional, but no less firm. On our part, the Central Intelligence Agency will also initiate necessary legal procedures to demand compensation for the damage to Mr. Thorne's honor, reputation, and emotional well-being caused by Officer Kopetsky's actions. The figure we propose to resolve this matter amicably is $25,000. Additionally, we request a formal public apology from the Fairfax County Police Department as well as from Officer Dale Kopetsky personally. Chief Reynolds knew he was in an extremely difficult position with few options. The pressure from the CIA was immense and entirely justified. If this case went to court, the consequences could be far worse for both the police department and the city government. After a short phone call apparently to Fairfax City's legal counsel, Chief Reynolds returned to the room his decision made. "All right," he said. "Officer Dale Kopetsky will be terminated. This decision will take effect as soon as we complete the necessary paperwork expected within the next 24 hours. Regarding the compensation, the city accepts the $25,000 figure you proposed to resolve this matter amicably and avoid a lengthy and unnecessarily costly lawsuit." Shortly thereafter, Officer Dale Kopetsky was called into the office. In front of Marcus Thorne, the CIA agents and Chief Reynolds Kopetsky was informed of his termination by the Chief of Police. Kopetsky completely collapsed. He couldn't stand steadily, his face ashen, his knees feeling like they would buckle. He stammered, trying to apologize to Marcus Thorne, his voice now devoid of any arrogance, filled only with extreme fear and belated regret, though it was unclear whether that regret truly stemmed from recognizing his mistake or just from fear of the consequences. I really didn't know. I apologize, sir. I was completely wrong. Please, forgive me." Marcus Thorne looked directly at Kopetsky, not with an expression of elation or victory, but with a stern and somewhat pitiful gaze. "Your apology," Marcus said, his voice low and steady, "should perhaps be directed to all the people you have treated unjustly, insulted, or abused in the past simply because of their skin color, their background, or any prejudice you harbored. I hope this will be a lesson you never forget, and for others as well." Dale Kopetsky was then escorted out of Food Mart by two other police officers who had been called in later. He was no longer a police officer. He faced an uncertain future, jobless without his primary source of income. His reputation and honor in the community shattered, and more importantly, the $25,000 compensation that he would likely have to pay himself, or at least a significant portion, depending on the city's professional liability insurance terms. It was a heavy financial blow to his life. Within less than 24 hours, Dale Kopetsky officially received his termination notice from the Fairfax County Police Department. A brief internal memo was circulated throughout the department, emphasizing the reason for termination as serious violations of professional conduct, abuse of power while on duty, and discriminatory behavior negatively impacting the image and reputation of the force. A week later, Marcus Thorne received a check for $25,000 from the Fairfax County Treasury. Without a moment's hesitation, he endorsed the back of the check and immediately donated the entire sum to a reputable local nonprofit organization specializing in providing free legal aid to victims of police brutality and racial discrimination. For Marcus, the money held little material significance, but the act of donation carried important symbolic meaning. The Fairfax County Police Department also issued a brief press release posted on their official website. The statement acknowledged an regrettable incident involving an officer of the department and pledged that the police department would enhance training programs on anti-racism community interaction skills and the appropriate and judicious use of force for all sworn officers. There was no detailed and direct public apology, as Marcus and the CIA lawyer had initially requested, but Kopetsky's swift and decisive termination was itself a strong signal, a powerful implicit warning sent out. Marcus Thorne subsequently returned to his regular duties at the Central Intelligence Agency. The unfortunate incident at Food Mart had no negative impact on his mission or career. However, it left a rather deep impression on his mind. It reminded him that injustice, blind prejudice, and abuse of power existed not only in distant conflict-ridden lands where he often operated, but were still present, simmering and sometimes erupting right in his own homeland, within a society considered civilized and developed. The Officer Kopetsky incident did not leak widely to major media outlets, primarily due to the sensitive nature of the case, involving a CIA agent and the swift, discreet resolution by the involved parties. However, within the Fairfax County Police Department, the story of the racist white cop who foolishly messed with a black CIA operative quickly spread and became an anecdote, a weighty, implicit warning to all other officers. Manager Linda Alvarez and the Food Mart staff vividly remembered every detail of that day. They often recounted to each other the story of the mysterious black man who faced a police officer's gun with extraordinary calm and ultimately made the abuser of power pay the price. Their respect and a slight awe for Marcus Thorne, though they still didn't know who he really was or what he did, had increased significantly. Justice sometimes comes from the most unexpected directions, and accountability for wrongdoing is inevitable sooner or later. Blind prejudice, discrimination, and abuse of power, especially by those entrusted to protect citizens and maintain social order, will always exact a heavy price. The truth, however, concealed or deliberately ignored, will eventually find its way into the light. That was the bitter lesson Dale Kopecki learned, and also a reminder for all of us. What do you think about how Marcus Thorne handled this complex situation? Should he have revealed his special identity sooner to avoid unnecessary trouble? If you were Chief Howard Reynolds, head of the Fairfax Police Department, would you have made a similar decision, or would you have tried to find another way to protect your officer? Even knowing he was wrong, does this story make you reflect further on the persistent issue of racial discrimination and the responsibilities and limits of power for those in public service in our society today?